On this episode of AV Week, the software-based AV systems, taking a look at NAB and CES, who have both mandated vaccines, and hacking in the AV industry. All that and more next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 522, recorded Friday, August 20th, 2021. Open Garden.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Crestron and by Daylight, the leading producer of high-quality projection screens worldwide.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audiovisual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to discuss the news and information we have gathered this week. First and foremost, 4 hours due west of me is the lovely young lady, Erica Williams from Henderson Engineers. Welcome, ma'am.
Hi.
Also with us, I guess I'll do Earl's closest to farthest away, an old friend of ours, Nick Milani. Nick is now with Epiphan Video. Welcome, sir.
Good to see you again, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you. And just for the geography's sake, Nick is in New Jersey. And finally, last but not least, way over across the pond, where it is still drinking time, is our buddy Tom Milner from Service and Support. Welcome, sir.
Hey, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We mentioned the fact that it's drinking time because just in case, Mitchell has to bleep something out, it will probably be Tom. All right. Not all that. Here we go. If you have paid attention to the AV space anytime in the last, let's say, 10 days or so, you will be well aware of the fact that there's a number of cancellations happening for CEDIA Expo. CEDIA Expo is the residential, the custom integration channel trade show happening in Indianapolis, September 1st to the 3rd. AVNation is going. I'm going. Our buddy Chris Netto right now is going. Danto is going. We've each got some panels we're on. I'm going to be covering it from the AVNation side and interviewing folks that are on the show floor. However, there are quite a few that aren't going. CES announced this week that all attendees must show proof of COVID-19 vaccination. CES, this consumer electronics show, the biggest electronics show that happens in the world, happens in Vegas. NAB, the National Association of Broadcasters, followed suit a day later. So they are also mandating a COVID-19 vaccination proof. CEDIA Expo, massive exodus. They had over 40 exhibitors pull out, most notably all of the big ones. So if you think about the Infocom show floor and you think about a big booth, it's no longer there at CEDIA. Infocom updated their safety protocols last week, mandating masks, 6 feet distancing. First and foremost on this, CES and NAB are in Las Vegas. CEDIA is in Indianapolis, and Infocom is in Orlando, Florida. For those of you outside of the states, Mr. Milner and others, that means there's 3 separate laws, 3 separate guidelines, 3 separate restriction capabilities. It's also based on other countries. The spike looks to be at its peak roughly in the States. So, Erica, I'm going to start with you as the AV user of this group. What does a vaccine mandate do to you as a potential attendee? What does a mask mandate do to you? Does it do anything? Is it outside of this realm? It doesn't matter what the show organizers do. You're more concerned with what the actual variant is doing.
I don't think it affects me too much personally. Here locally, we've already started to instate, indoor mask mandates again, so it's become a way of life again. We have local businesses that have already started to instate, you have to show vaccination before being allowed, and we're talking like bars, you can't go into this bar or restaurant even without showing proof of vaccination. So it's familiar. Honestly, at the end of the day, it makes me feel more comfortable. Personally, I am vaccinated, so, I do have that working in my favor, but at the end of the day, I take a conservative approach in that this is a public health issue, and therefore we should be looking out for each other as a community, regardless of if that community is right here at home or it's our AV community. We need to be looking out for each other. So, it's a messy business. Yeah, obviously, like you said, Tim, you've got 3 different locations that are going to have 3 different laws, and I mean, there's no telling what's going to happen. Honestly, like our attorney general here in Missouri is filing lawsuits saying that it's unconstitutional to require masks indoors. So, with so many different locations and different government types, or government types in the sense of how they're run based on, people's political beliefs, you never know what's going to happen. And I think it's more important that these organizations work independently and they make decisions for themselves, not entirely based on what the laws are saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned the fact that Erica is 4 hours due west of me. She lives in Missouri. Technically, I tell people I live in St. Louis, but I literally live on the Illinois side of St. Louis. So I actually have a completely different set of governors and governor and attorney general. Mr. Milner, Live Nation also announced this week. Live Nation in the U.S., they're a concert promoter, but they also own a number of venues. You have to have a vaccine mandate to get into their venues even. And they're pushing up against some governors, including the governor of Florida, where InfoComm will be held, who's also being sued by cruise ship companies because he says you can't mandate a mask, you can't mandate the vaccine. The cruise ships are saying, like hell, we can't. So, Tom, when you look at this, what do you want to hear from show organizers, and when do you want to hear it? I mean, the fact that CES is 5 months away, and they're already saying you got to have a vaccine mandate. Is that what you want to hear? 5 or 6 months in advance, or even before this variant, kind of works its way out?
Well, I think the interesting thing is here, Tim, is that I think CES are actually planning for the next variant. They're not planning for this one. They're actually thinking ahead, and they're already thinking these shows that are going to go ahead this year, they're going to take the most of the pain because they're the ones that are dealing with the unknown. The shows that have actually occurred in the US have actually been few and far between, really, compared to the last show that was on in Europe with ISE back in 2019. Because no, 2020.
It was 2020. Hang on, yeah, it was 2020, right as this whole thing was starting. Yeah.
And if it had been 2 weeks later, it wouldn't have happened.
Yep.
So a lot of people say that ISE was the best show ever because it was sparsely populated by attendees, and they got to actually speak to all the exhibitors that they wanted to. But the interesting thing is here is there's all the various different companies that are attending. They're obviously all thinking about their employees, but they're also thinking about the cost as to if they don't get enough exhibitors through the door, what's the point in doing it? Now, when you put that into context and actually realise that everyone wants to go to the shows, there's no doubt about that. We all want to meet up with each other. We all want to, have the face-to-faces that we haven't had in 18 months or so. But we've actually got to be sensible about this. The UK's doing okay at the moment because obviously we got ahead of the game with vaccinations, and we haven't got quite as many naysayers as there are perhaps in the US saying that they don't want the vaccine. We pretty much exclusively want it. That we've got some younger people and some perhaps people with longer hair wearing sandals who say that it's all chemicals that they don't want in their bodies, but it is what it is. The pure and simple thing is here, you've got to have the vaccine mandate. You've got to, because you're actually trying to protect as many of those people as possible that are attending, and guess what, the people that they're going home to as well. But you're also doing the same with the mask mandate, because you don't have to be 6 feet away from each other, but actually if you're wearing a mask, you can talk freely, you can interact, you can still attend a show. But when I saw that ISE is saying, well, you've got to be 6 feet away from each other, to me, that killed the show. What's the point in standing 6 foot away from each other and shouting at each other through a mask?
Especially when the aisles are 4 feet wide.
Yeah. And, 6 feet away from each other, you'd have to have a much, much bigger convention area to actually fit all those people in if you're having a standard attendance. Because otherwise, they're not going to be 6 feet away from each other. So it's an arbitrary number that actually, if you just do the other two things, which obviously is completely against the the governor of Florida's idea as to what you should be doing, because he's got all his money invested in the company that's doing the Regeneron or whatever it's called. It's just a complete crock of shit. There you go. There's one.
There's one.
Should have got my drink ready.
So I don't know. I think that the shows should go ahead, but knowing that the majority of the attendees are going to be really sensible about it, they're going to be washing their hands, they're going to be using their hand sanitizer, and they'll be bashing elbows, kicking feet, whatever it is that they do to greet each other. They're not going to be giving big hugs, or if they are, frankly, they're a little bit silly still at the moment. Because you can have the vaccine, but you can still carry the virus around and spread it to others. Just don't do that.
Yeah, the idea that you can spread it to others is I have a number of folks who are not going to CEDIA because they have young children at home, kids who are not able to get the vaccine yet.
Yeah.
Nick, before I get you in there, just so I've said this and I've made this, but I am going to every show this year, right? I'm not, I'm booked to go to NAB. I am going to CEDIA to cover it. I'm going to Infocom, but I think it's important to say, as long as they have the show, we're going to do it safely, but we are going to go, right? I'm not going to judge anybody who does. I'm not going to judge anybody who doesn't, right? So that's kind of my 2 cents in it, as far as my own opinion on this. And it's not even my opinion. It's just, I'm safe. I'm vaccinated. We're going to go.
Yeah.
Nick, both from an attendee standpoint, but also somebody who's exhibited there and manufacturing, when you look at this, kind of talk both from the ROI of getting as many people there, but also longer time with people, right? Because Tom mentioned, well, if there's fewer people, then you're going to have more time with somebody. Does that play out? Is there a balance there?
Well, I think there naturally is, but I think first off, we have to probably acknowledge that these are going to devolve into regional shows. And part of the beauty of these events historically is that they were international events. So we were able to, as manufacturers, go get a very broad sample and engage with customers from all over the world. And really, there's something to that, right? And so, as we think about the restrictions, we're a Canadian-based company. So we have a unique challenge in that the United States government won't allow Canadians into the country right now. So we have real restrictions for our ability to even present.
Or
right,
Brits.
A lot of folks.
Well, there's
right?
a reason for you, but that's beside the point.
So I think there's some of those pragmatic challenges, but the actual event itself, I think there is going to be probably a good in-depth networking and opportunities. I find it a little bit curious, the idea of 6-foot mandates with masks when you're trying to have a social event in a loud space. I don't know about you all, but I find it very difficult to even have a conversation with people in masks and loud, because most people read lips in order to understand what's going on, right? There's a bit, when you're in a bar, you have to watch what the person's saying because you can't understand them otherwise. But that aside, if it is a regional event, what I see happening is, I'll be personally attending, but I think there's going to be a huge drop off in corporate sponsorship. And unfortunately, I think there's going to be a little bit of a chicken game that gets played as we approach the event. And all of a sudden, much like CEDIA, you get 2 weeks outside the event. And what it really comes down to is when you get to the logistics costs of shipping the booth, which ends up being a $20,000 cost for even an organization as small as ours, then all of a sudden you start looking really hard and saying, wait a second, is it worth the money and is the ROI there? Because, in an event, if you can go in, if you think that there's going to be a quarter of the attendees, but the costs haven't changed and you still have the same overhead and the same T&E, and more importantly, by the way, Epifan's seen an explosion in our business over the last year and a half. And frankly, we need our salespeople out working with our customers and helping to, drive business. And them standing in a trade show hall, staring at other vendors and networking and having drinks, while it might be great for everybody, it might be fun, it doesn't actually help them achieve their number or help us drive the business forward. So I think there's real headwinds here. And we also have to acknowledge we're 7 months off from the next event. At some point, we just need to roll our focus into 2022. I saw something online the other day that said, we feel like it just recovered from 2020 and there's only 4 months left in 2021. And so there's just a reality to these things, right? That I think there's just a lot of challenges. And I love the fact, Tim, that you bring up children, because I think that is the biggest concern. If all of us are vaccinated, if people are showing up unvaccinated, that gives a chance to bring it home to our families. And that's just, that's a real decision that everyone has to make. And I respect everyone's decision the way they make it, but that's a real concern. especially as we go into the fall school year, what that looks like through the challenges I think a lot of families have struggled with a society where both parents work, trying to manage home health, home daycare, homeschooling. It's just been a mess for a lot of people, and it's put a lot of stress on a lot of people's relationships and put a lot of stress on people's finances. It's been a big challenge. So there's just some realities to the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely there is. Absolutely there is. And here's the thing: this is not the last time that we will talk about on this program. Just guarantee you that I was writing up the notes from and I write over the notes from last week's, and it's like sure enough we talked about COVID last week. So it's a continuing story certainly.
I agree with everything that Nick said, by the way, but I'm going to be a little bit more of a pessimist. This is still going into 2022. It's not going to be end of 2022. 2023 that we're actually going to see normalcy.
Well, at some point we might have to accept that this is just going to be a new viral load on our societies, that until we accept vaccination en masse, I don't know how we're going to get away with that.
In terms of what people want to get back to, what they experienced back in 2019, it's not going to be until the end of 2022, early 23 that we can even begin to get back to that, in my opinion. So, all the various shenanigans going on in the world, where it's politically motivated or whatever, the shows have an opportunity to either, be really bold about it, like CES have, and said about the vaccine mandate, get the mask mandate on as well. That's ultimately all they can do. Then it's down to the individual to decide whether or not they go. But honestly, what I think AVIXA have done so far, it's just the wrong decisions. And, bear in mind their close links to ISE. We saw what happened this year with ISE and the debacle that was their roadshow. It's absolutely pointless. And the return on investment that Nick mentioned is absolutely crucial to all the exhibitors. If they're not getting a return on investment, why even bother going to these big shows? So it will turn back into everyone just wanting to do regional shows or just their own shows. That's the other possibility. That
is a possibility. The one thing about AVIXA, the reason I mentioned this at the start, is they are in Florida, right? So they've got constraints that NAB and CES do not have. Yeah. So that's kind of the interesting thing. And I think what may end up happening, or a version of this for ISE, is kind of what happened this year, right? A regionalized, and you guys both said it. These might become regional shows, or maybe we have one big ISE, and then they break it up into those who don't feel comfortable. Then you do have a localized ISE. I can certainly see that happening as well. So it'll be interesting.
So side note, before we move on to the next one really quick, I just remembered a conversation we had on our team. So we have software developers, and they're going to a conference in Atlanta, the Render conference in Atlanta. And they just announced the other day that they are going to be requiring proof of vaccine or a negative COVID test. And they are going to be doing rapid tests on every attendee before they're allowed to enter the venue.
Wow. Holy cow. Wow. And for those of you, again, outside of the States, that is a conservative state that would not quite be in line with Florida, but closer to Florida than Nevada, certainly. So that is interesting. I'll be happy to watch that one, too. When is that one, Erica?
It's the Render conference in Atlanta.
I'll make Mitchell look it up.
September 13th through the 15th.
That's close.
Still pretty close.
Next story. T-Mobile was hacked again, I can say, and I'll tell you what that means in a minute. T-Mobile here in the States, cell phone carrier, was hacked and exposed 100 million customers' data. A group on the dark web is claiming to have obtained the information and is selling it for 6 Bitcoin or $280,000, I guess, whichever.
What a steal, by the way. I mean, can we?
Well,
if we each chip in a Bitcoin, we got this thing.
I don't want to have to buy back my own data, okay? I'm involved in this, so.
A little too close to home.
And it's not even, that's the thing is, the story's from Wired, your data's already out there.
Well, but we got to stop allowing that. This argument that, the government already knows, or they already have our data, or it's already out there, that's bullshit. We've got to stop. We got to stop allowing that. There needs to be data protection in all the countries, and the EU is so far advanced in what they're doing compared to the States. There would be financial repercussions if that was a European-based company. And Erica, you would be seeing yourself as actually getting a financial settlement. Instead, here, what you see is, they already have the information. It's BS. We have to stop accepting that. This is not 1995. Here
Excuses,
it's
isn't
all
it?
excuses, and it's excuses designed to protect the corporations from the realities of the cost of not protecting our data. Which, in the first place, if you really want to get me going, because I know you do, Tim, where are the data privacy laws and the data transparency laws? Like, did you realize, Erica, that you were giving them that information when you signed up? No, and now all of a sudden somebody has access to it for a relatively low cost of money. It's time for real change.
Yeah, the thing that worries me specifically about this is the IMEI numbers. It's one thing. I've got notifications of having have my information in the Equifax breach and other breaches. So it's like, okay, well, here we go again. This sucks. But it's that IMEI number that's specifically tied to my cell phone and what they can do.
So
with
pause
that
for a second there, Erica. Explain to folks who aren't familiar, because I wasn't. I had to look it up. What that means.
The IMEI number.
Yep.
Okay, so the IMEI number, so if you grab your cell phone and you pull out your SIM card, or if you look in your settings, your IMEI number is a specific identifier to your device and to your SIM card. So when people have that IMEI number, they can essentially spoof it. They can swap it out, they can deactivate your cell phone and start using your information and your data. And they've already they use it for really, really intense social engineered phishing scams. So the data that they're gathering, they're not only gathering your data, your personal information, they're pretending to be you on a very, very personal level that it makes it so much easier to confuse people. It's not like getting an email where you can hover over the link just to make sure it's a good link or not. It's a legitimate text message, and at the rate that these hackers are going, they can wordsmith some pretty convincing stuff. So that's the scariest part about this T-Mobile hack is that IMEI number piece.
Well, I think, the vision of cell phones at the beginning, I worked at Motorola very early in my career, and Ed Zander, who was a CEO when I was a young engineer there, talked about how the cell phone is the one device that stitches together our entire digital life, right? Every aspect of my life comes together on this device, and it's one of the only places where it does. And the ability for them to gain that sort of information is disturbing. And people should be, if people were paying attention, they'd be outside with pitchforks right now. Yet, the thing that frustrates me the most is that, again, no legislation, no government action. In fact, they're just sticking their head in the sand. And let's just be honest, it's because all the government officials are getting paid off by these big businesses to look the other way. And at some point, we've got to
thank you, capitalism.
Right? At some point, we got to step forward. And again, bravo to the EU for actually having some real data laws. And if they didn't have them, by the way, we wouldn't even be implementing GDPR in most of the organizations in the United States. Because the truth is, most companies are only even doing baseline data protection efforts because of the Europeans, because they've been forced to.
Yeah.
And it's time that Americans get upset, step forward. And if we're going to be a technological leader in the world, we also need to be a data privacy leader in the world. And really start working as consumers the same way.
GDPR is not all it's cracked up to be.
But it's better than nothing. Right. I mean, it's a step forward,
Absolutely.
Right?
It's totally better than nothing.
But GDPR is one of those things that on paper it looks great. In terms of implementation and use of it, honestly, it's very poorly policed. They tend to focus on the wrong things and go after the wrong people for doing it ever so slightly wrong. Or not perhaps implementing as stringently as they need to. But I can tell you right now, we've had GDPR for nearly 3 years here now, and I get more spam now than I ever did before.
Interesting.
So how good is it?
But you also have to remember, too, the way that our government is run. When it's convenient for the federal government, they allow states to make their own independent laws. So as long as the federal government is under the guise of, the states have the right to make their own opinion. I mean, you look at California and you look at the CCPA laws out in California, it's, maybe we start on a smaller level and start to push it locally in our states. And that's going to have a major impact on companies that are located in multiple states. But if you start getting the companies starting to shift it, then that's, obviously the government is, I don't want to say controlled, but strongly influenced by the companies. So start small and hope it gets big.
Well, and I actually think it starts way upstream, and this is something that nobody's addressed, is that for years I've said we need something similar to a truth in lending law as a truth in data law. These 120-page giving my life away to these companies,
Legalese.
right? It's ridiculous. They need to summarize it into 20 basic factors that we can read and that we get to say no to it. And that's the stuff where nobody really wants to address it because frankly, these companies are making too much money off our data and they're paying too many legislatures and they're the lobbyists are getting in there. The amount of money that's being exchanged based on our personal information is just insane. And the hard part is that the majority of Americans, I'll speak for my countrymen, the majority of Americans have no clue how manipulative that's being used against us and how much that's leading to a lot of the social problems we're having, a lot of the economic challenges. I mean, it's coming back in so many nefarious ways that we just don't realize. And unfortunately, as somebody that's been involved probably too close to that data for too long in my career, I'm the one that gets ranty at the wine tasting, and everybody thinks it's like, oh, there goes Nick on his rant about data. But it's playing out. We're seeing it in real time. We've got to get in front of this stuff. And I think it starts actually really early on with very simple legal language, with very clear data transparency, so that consumers understand exactly what they're giving when they download whatever random app. And they give the XYZ government access to their facial data, which then can be used against them in all kinds of nefarious ways.
There's a really good documentary on Netflix that talks specifically about that stuff called The Social Dilemma, and it covers how those social media sites are mining and selling and using your information. So if you haven't watched that yet, I highly recommend it.
And I'll give you one more, and this one will scare you. The infotainment systems. Make sure that you are looking into those and the information that they're gathering and giving away, not personal necessarily, right? So I can't tell that Tim Albright is a crazy driver and speeds everywhere he goes. I'm not admitting to that, just in case any legal people or law enforcement are listening. But it can tell that a middle-aged white guy in St. Louis speeds everywhere he goes, and you sell that to insurance companies. So
sound really guilty there to me, Tim.
I don't know what you're talking about. All right, last story. Last story. It's actually a unique perspective on Crestron Sure's team up. Harry Stendo, which is an old friend from Europe, he writes in AV Magazine that the team certification of Shure, their DSP and Telemix, and Crestron's Flex have implications beyond those two companies and those team certifications. Quick note, both of those, Shure and Crestron, are sponsors of AVNation. Harold goes on to outline the massive impact, quote unquote, that he says of these announcements. One, you've got AV installs that are becoming, as he calls them, PC-free zones. Now, there's not a PC, you just don't see it, just like most of AV gear anymore. They're hidden in racks, just like the other gear. That also lays the groundwork for deeply integrated systems, and it opens the gates to PC-based software for AV, not just DSP, but also it lays the groundwork for video matrixing based on software. Nick, I'm going to pick on you first. When you look at the impact of these two announcements and you look at what Harold says is going down the road of software-driven, software-based solutions where, service providers could put these in, software developers could say, oh, all of your video and your audio they're just packets anyway, so I can create a software-based solution and you don't need a piece of gear anymore. What's the real impact of going down this road?
Well, first off, I think he did a tremendous job of taking the news and really projecting it forward. Frankly, he did a better job of storytelling than the manufacturers did. But it makes sense, right? I think this is just the evolution of the industry. And you've heard this endless debate since I joined the industry 6 years ago around the consumption of AV into the IT world, or however you want to describe it. The reality is that you have compute and then you have applications, and everybody segments their software and their solutions that way. Every mature industry does. There's a place for purpose built because I think there's mission critical involved in a lot of this. But ultimately, first thing I'll say is that by doing this and the talk about like putting it away and hiding it back is technology should be like plumbing for work. When I go to my sink, I don't worry about how the water got to the faucet. I just want hot to come out when I turn the hot side and cold to come out when I come to the cold side, because that's the most intuitive thing we can do. And so you see this kind of push further and further in that space. The second thing is that I think that as organizations continue to evolve their technology away from proprietary hardware to PC-based applications or Android-based applications or any type of standards-based applications, you see this opportunity to create greater leverage. And this is all empowering the consumer. It's also incredibly empowering to our channel, to our industry, but we have to evolve our business practices. And this is something, Tim, from my experience working at Crestron for a number of years and supporting a lot of their cloud initiatives. It's a challenge to get the dealers to actually change the way they think about implementing. And it comes down to simple things like how they compensate their salespeople, how they actually report their financials, and how they think about their strategy of what they're trying to achieve. But ultimately, what I think is going to happen as a result of this, if you project it down the road, is that you're going to see the really successful organizations going out and saying, I see that these applications serve my customer and ultimately serve the simplicity of use. And by doing that, there will be an ongoing revenue stream. There'll be a retainment of a customer that will serve my organization for decades to come if I stay focused on the outcomes. Instead, too often, we're focused on maximizing gross profit on the 4 rooms we're staring at today. And that is the trap. And so hopefully this just continues to open people's eyes to the possibilities of what this next world and this new frontier is going to look like. And I think bravo to Crestron and Shure. The real achievement here is for them to actually agree and put it in the same device. And I think that opening that up, also look at what Crestron did with the scheduling solutions. Another great example where you buy a scheduling panel, but you have 30 different vendors that you can put onto that device, allowing the customer to evolve it over time. That's actually a very analogous situation. So I think what a lot of the smaller hardware manufacturers are going to be, I think, scrambling a little bit to figure out how do they catch up to this, and how do we create ecosystems that aren't walled gardens but actually allow people to run the applications they need to in service of their employees. Because at the end of the day, that's what customers are going to buy based on.
Yeah, absolutely. Erica, kind of the same venue here. Erica's in charge of a lot of the AV when it comes to Henderson. You're looking at this, is this something that's interesting to you guys? Is it something that's interesting to you as we kind of make this migration over to software based where you can kind of dictate your own hardware, or is it something where you would rather have the hardware and just, tell me what I need and we're going to put it in?
We're already doing it. So this is actually my bread and butter. I'm currently sitting on about 25 Zoom room systems right now, where we've got about 8 of the 25 done, but this is the direction that we're going. Over the years, the complexity of the systems, the frustrations for the users, our main priority is what is going to be the easiest thing for our users to handle. That's our number one priority. And then our second priority is, we do a lot of everything in-house. We do partner with an integrator for purchasing and the larger scale, like the larger scale projects where it can't be just a PC, and USB devices. But we do a lot in-house. So, first is what's going to be easiest for the users, what's going to be a good experience for the users. And that's from the time you walk in the room to the time your meeting ends. And then the second thing is what is the best solution for our support team? What's the most transparent single pane of glass? Like, what's the easiest way for our support team to do this? So, if you're looking at a $40,000 integrated room with a codec and a DSP and Crestron control and an iPad and all that stuff, those are all different moving parts and pieces. And our internal staff, if something breaks and something goes wrong right before a board meeting, that's really complex for our team to have to try and really get in there and figure it out, especially for the newer people who come on. But if you just have a PC-based room that's just running an application with some USB devices, that's a heck of a lot quicker, a heck of a lot easier for you to figure out. So not only are you're solving your problems quicker, you're building the confidence of your team, and it's a chain effect. And I did not hear about the Shure and the Crestron thing, but I'm super freaking excited. I can't wait. Obviously the room I'm in right now is a smaller type of huddle room. We wouldn't necessarily need something that complex, but when we get into the bigger, more client-facing rooms or our boardroom type of things, having that extra layer of, this company really knows their stuff. Let's get this kind of thing in here. Like, it's awesome that that's available. Like, I'm so pumped for this. So pumped.
Well, there we go. All right, Mr. Milner, you'll have the last word on this. Where do you see this as when it comes to whether it's commercial, whether it's the retail space? Where do you see this software drive going?
Again, I'll be the pessimist. I'll be the negative Nelly in the room. I don't necessarily see it as a good thing because it completely changes the profile of the service that you require post-install. You need much more complex and knowledgeable service engineers than perhaps you did with just pure hardware who would swap a device. But the other problem is they're saying they're going to develop these various bits of software to do all these wonderful things, based on what platform? What agreed protocols are they going to use? So could you end up with 30 different or more implementations of something that does the same thing, and one won't talk to the other? Who knows? This is the one problem with anything software-wise. They all tend to do it in silos, unless they're actually following an initial protocol that they develop to. None of it could work with each other. So what good is that? It could work great for some organisations that just need it for their internal stuff. But if you're looking at something that needs to go globally, you just can't guarantee that everyone's going to be able to use the same thing. So, to give you the best example, something that goes on in France, France, especially to the UK, they're the ones that were always the rabble-rousers and basically saying, no, unless it's developed by the French, we're not interested. What happens when that happens? Then you've got the monster that is China and what software development they do. Is it safe? Is it secure? Wow, all the various things that can go wrong probably will go wrong. But it is an evolution. It's something that I'm sure a lot of people would like to see, the simplicity of the interface and all that kind of stuff if it's developed right. But the background behind it can be an absolute mire, an absolute, disgusting thing to be involved with, because it's so difficult to actually keep going. But that's me, I'm always a hardware guy.
All right. No, it's awesome. I appreciate the contrarian view. So, all right, guys, that'll do it for this week. Erica Williams, thank you so much. How do people connect with you or Henderson Engineers?
Thank you. Always a pleasure. Check out hendersonengineers.com. We got some really great stuff going on and quite a few positions open if you want to be somewhere awesome. Check it out. You can find me on Twitter at HaircutFW or Erica Williams on LinkedIn.
And Mr. Tom Milner, thank you, sir. How do people connect with you or service and support?
On Twitter at ServSup, ServSupp. I'm on LinkedIn as well if anyone wants to find me. But anyone who wants any kind of global implementation, rollout, whatever they need, come find us at our website, www.servantsupportlimited.co.uk.
All right, for Tim Albright, don't follow me on the Twitters, but go by the website, avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others. The other weekly one that we do is called ResiWeek. It looks at the residential side, the CEDIA side of the industry. They'll be covering CEDIA as well as I will going over to CEDIA. So you can check out all that. Also go to our website and get ready for InfoComm. As I mentioned before, we're going to CEDIA unless it cancels. We're going to InfoComm unless it cancels. Don't see that happening. We have an AV users party happening on the 26th. It is at the Ice Bar. You can go to avnation.tv/infocom-2021. Find out all the things that we're doing, finding out the ways that we're keeping safe, but also connecting and networking. So, and you can also check out our sponsors that are helping us cover CEDIA, cover InfoComm, and bring you AV Week every single week. So all that and more at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That's all the time we have for AV Week.